Hi and welcome to part 3 of the DNAFit series, where we are looking at today at my exercise results. So again, what we did, once my results come back, they look at the same genetic markers, and these ones in particular looking at how you can personalise your exercise program based on your genetics. Now again, like the other report, they do go through and give you some information about how the genetics work and give you some understanding of it. And then we get into some results. The first result you get is your power and endurance. So they base this on certain gene markers, how powerful, the science behind it, and have their own personal algorithm to actually give you a breakdown on what you're more predisposed, what your bias is really. So I have what was known as an endurance bias, a very heavy bias. I'm 71% endurance, 29% power. So most people mostly say, well, looking at me being an exomorph, yeah, that's pretty much what I'd put you as someone that's good at endurance, and that's what you should be doing. The interesting thing, I'll say, looking back at my nutrition report, being an ectomorph, you should see that I handle carbohydrates quite well. Technically, I should be on a low carbohydrate, high fat consumed diet. So not necessarily by knowing someone's body type and looking at some individuals, that genetics can come into play. So even though this is a result that I was fully expecting, what it can do is also help support someone's goal. Now the interesting thing is, if me being an endurance athlete, if I want to go for a marathon and train for that, that's quite simple. I'll do very well at it, and I do. I come from a running background. Now the interesting thing is, compare that to someone that's mostly my shape and body type and wants to put on muscle and improve their size, and they come back with a 71% endurance potential. Now doing traditional strength and power, 5x5 or stuff, or traditional 3 sets of X amount hypertrophy training, if that's what you're being guideline recommended, doesn't work for you. And in my past, I find that I don't get the gains on those sort of programs. Now recently I've been doing more high volume training, and I see great return on that in terms of muscle development and size compared to more traditional strength and hypertrophy training. And the reason for that is I'm working within my nutrients genetics. I'm doing more, which my body will allow me to do, to produce more of a greater stimulus, rather than trying to lift heavy, not as many reps, and produce more of a power workout. So if we flip that head, so you have someone that is mostly a large power potential, more power bias, and they come to you and want to do an endurance event like a 10k run. It doesn't mean to say that by genetics you can't do it. What it means is, if I was to train him, I'd look to do more sprint and interval work and give him more rest in the time, but look to push him harder, more explosive, to get the similar response, rather than taking him on long endurance training, because we know it's not going to work for him. The interesting thing is, what happens if you have the 50-50? It means you have the ability to use both quite as well and have great power and endurance adaptations. So what it means is you can have a mixture of forms in your training to get the benefits, or you can still just focus on one or the other. So with this, it just gives you a greater sense of direction with your training, and that is it. And it can give you it quicker as well. So if I knew this going in with someone maybe that has a power, wants to become increase muscle mass, or wants to lose weight, and if they're more endurance, I can now tailor their training based on those variables. After that, what it does, it looks at your VO2 max abilities. So what this does, it looks at your aerobic potential. So mine's medium. So what that means is that my ability to uptake and utilise oxygen effectively is about average, which is fine. And if I was high and very high, it means I could have a higher ability to do this. Again, if someone's lower, most really would struggle in terms of some of the endurance events out there, based on their ability to uptake and absorb oxygen. Moving on, after this we have ability to recover. So what happens post-exercise? Now most people are told within 24 hours you can train again. Now for some people like myself, who's a slow recoverer, this is not the case, that I'll mostly need up to 48 hours recovery to actually efficiently recover fully from exercise. So what that means is that I'd have to be very creative in my programs if I want to train more, and I might recover muscularly, be able to spare muscle, but I must make sure also my energy systems could be recovering, or I'll work a different aspect of that energy system to actually keep my training going. So what it allows me to do is to actually plan my training in my week better. It also highlights the need then for a greater need of post-recovery fuel, and key sources, so kind of some of the fats I need, some of the vitamins I need, and also some of the choices in terms of things like vegetables to actually promote a quicker recovery as well. Combine that with my high injury risk paints a lovely picture. One thing that I've noticed recently, that I don't tend to need to train as much, don't tend to want to train as much, again, whether that's work-life balance creeping in, or it could be the other end for me with in terms of not feeling 100% and not feeling I want to come in and push myself to the limit. So what it highlights me that I'm starting to train less, so it supports my recovery genetics. Now the injury risk is, I don't get many injuries, but it's pointing at high injury risk. What this points at is two things. One, if I don't overtrain, I reduce my risk of injury, and also if I look after my body in terms of the warm-up and the cool-down and some of the nutrition choices I make, will hopefully support my body to reduce the risk of injury risk. And this is mainly look at things like collagen and ligament injuries and the risks of things like tendonitis. So it's brilliant to actually be aware. So if you had someone come back with this, you'd most probably make sure they are rehabbing and looking after their body more on a daily basis, and becomes just a key part of their programming as the actual workout itself. Brilliantly gives you a nice little breakdown what your genes mean at the ends, and how that could mean what impact they have on your training, so you can actually look in the genetics in more detail. It actually goes through some of the genetics information there as well about what possibilities of the genes and what it means. Now again, like the nutrition report, what it does, it gives you a starting point of planning, but what it gives you the great ability to then go away and design exercise programs, periodise cycles based on your genetics to actually produce a greater response. So whether that is you getting more enjoyment out of it, you getting more results out of it, and getting a greater level of performance quicker, and that's what the ability of DNAFit gives to you. Now, Eat Right Move, I'm going to be looking to utilise DNAFit to help with support our own clients, but we also want to help as many people out there as possible. And if this is something you're interested in, it's a possibility that we can help support and coach you and give you advice based on your genes in respect to nutrition and or training. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to contact us at info@eatrightandmove.co.uk. That's info@eatrightandmove.co.uk. Leave an email just explaining that you're interested to learn more about the DNAFit, and one of our trainers will get in contact with you and hopefully answer any questions you might have. So until next time guys, see you later.